So anyway, happy solstice, or sad solstice, or everything solstice. At this moment, we're, 4 hours into the longest night of the year. And there's many hours to go. At least we are right here in the northern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere, it's the opposite, right? It's summer solstice. So even to say today is winter solstice is a little bit funny. Like, well, it is here, not everywhere. But it turns out, I looked this up, actually the vast majority of humans live in the northern hemisphere, close to 90%. So not that many people in the southern hemisphere, so I guess it's okay that we dominate the calendar conversation. But the solstices don't really matter that much unless you're pretty far from the equator, right? Unless you're in the higher latitudes of the northern hemisphere or the lower latitudes of the southern hemisphere. Yeah, I had to look this up because I'd forgotten we're just below the 49th parallel in Bellingham. So it's 49 degrees up from the equator, 90 being all the way to the pole, right, and 0 being at the equator. So we're a little more than halfway, up towards the North Pole. And so we have a significant difference in day length from the summer to the winter. But that's only because we're up here. Half of the people on the planet live within 20 degrees of the equator, in the equatorial zone. And there, the days are pretty much the same length all year round. And solstices and equinoxes don't really mean that much. So everything's so relative, isn't it? So relative, so positional. Everything in its dharma position, they say. But we are right here, aren't we? Right now. And in that position, right here, right now, we are in the longest dark night of the year. And starting tomorrow and every day until June, the day's getting a little bit longer. I don't know how you feel about this, but personally, I really love it, actually. I really love the shifting lengths of the day. And I noticed the other day that sometimes I tell the convenient story that I'm willing to put up with the short days in winter so that I get to enjoy the long days in summer. But then I thought about it and I thought that's not really true. I enjoy long days and short days, actually. And I just really enjoy that it changes. So it's funny how we say things that aren't really quite what we feel deeply in our heart. It's like what you're supposed to say or something like, oh, yeah, cold and wet and dark is bad, endless summer days are good. But it's not really that way, is it? It's all just exactly as it is. And every day is completely a day, whether it's 8 hours of daylight or 16 hours of daylight. And that's about the range here. Which is kind of cool, huh? Doubles from winter to summer and back again. But even this idea of dark and light are relative, are positional. Our mind makes simple categories: night, day, dark, light. And such a beautiful and helpful part of our teachings, of our practice, and Zen emphasizes this most strongly in all the Buddhisms, I think, is to question that simple story of the mind's making, that it's this or it's that, it's day or it's night, it's me or it's you, it's light or it's dark. What if it's more subtle, more complex, and more rich, more surprising, more unknowable than that in every case? What a richer world that is. One of the chants we chant, and I was hoping it would be service B night. I almost countermanded the but that's rude, so I didn't. Because I was hoping that we would chant our other chant, the merging of difference and unity, because it says exactly this, right? It talks about this very directly. In there it says, in the light there is darkness, but don't take it as darkness. In the dark there is light, but don't see it as light. And then you're like, well, what do I do? You know, how do I see it? And then Master Shirto says, the way you see it is light and dark oppose one another like the front and the back foot in walking. Isn't that a wonderful metaphor? If you had looked down during Kinhin, you would have seen that, right? You would have seen a front foot and a back foot at any given moment, right? But then it's like a different foot and different front foot and a different back foot. It's always changing, and there's not. And actually, now that we're sitting here, there's no front foot and no back foot. So what happened to the front foot and the back foot? So light and dark and everything like that. I mean, true in a way, right? There was a front foot and a back foot at some moment. At least it looked that way. And then it was different, and then it isn't, and it is, right? Light and dark, front and back. Our practice inviting us to just open up, to not take for granted such simple ways of thinking and talking, front and back, like and dislike. To not settle for this small, chopped up world where everything's divided up into two categories opposing each other. There is this apparent opposition, but and yet it's dynamic and it's not real in that way. And so there's tons and tons and tons of teachings about this, and some of them are, you know, kind of so Zen, I find them a little embarrassing, you know, so I don't always share them. I don't know what that is. I don't know. I don't want to bother people with this, you know. Be uncomfortable or confusing or something. But lately I've been into one of the Zenest of Zen teaching poems. We've been reading it a little bit in the early morning sit. It's very old. It's attributed to the third ancestor in China called Seng-ts'an. But nobody really knows if he wrote it, and I'm not 100% sure he even existed, right? So it's kind of in the mists of time. But the story that we tell in the tradition, which is equally true, right? History and myth, like, same thing, right? The story in the tradition is that the third ancestor wrote this teaching poem to help us get this through our thick heads. Third ancestor meaning the student of Bodhidharma's student. So this is about late 500s, early 600s, somewhere in there. The poem's called Faith in Mind, is the most common translation. Often you hear the Chinese title, Xinxinming. Not sure what the Japanese version is. The three characters in the title, actually literally the first one means like an engraving or a saying, a slogan. Second one means mind. Third one means faith. So really getting something deeply in mind. Another translation, English translation I saw was Song of the Trusting Mind. So faith and trust somehow emerge from understanding more deeply this freedom, this emptiness, this freedom from being stuck in concepts. There's something that's not just like, oh, I get it. There's some beauty there somehow. Faith, trust, some kind of openness there. So anyway, it's a long poem, and I've truncated it a little bit for tonight, actually abridged it a little bit. And if you've been hearing this in the morning, this will sound slightly different because I ended up deciding I didn't like that translation and I picked a different one, which is very ironic given the first lines of the poem, which are this. The great way is not difficult, simply set aside picking and choosing. So I picked this translation about picking and choosing. Anyway, here's the first part. The great way is not difficult, simply set aside picking and choosing. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are far apart. And actually that couplet there at the end also shows up in another one of the poems in our book. Smallest distinction is made, then we're in categories again. So this kind of way of talking is a little bit strange, because then it sounds to us like, oh, are we trying to sort of just negate all concepts and not think? And it maybe feeds a really unfortunate misperception about meditation that gives us all kinds of trouble, which is that I can't do it because I can't stop thinking, so I might as well give up now. I hear that a lot. Maybe you think that a lot. But I think, no, it's more like these teachers were seeing how strong this relative kind of way of chopping things up is. So they're doing a big push. And it's almost like just kind of a yoga that's working on your mind, So it's not trying to negate the relative world by saying it's only the absolute world. It's saying, like, you're way over here. It's like, come over here. See what it's like. So I'm going to read my whole sort of abridged version of this, which is about half the length. And the invitation is just to let it soak in on this long night. I've been stories lately. This is like tonight's story, tonight's bedtime story. This old Zen poem seeking to free us from our dualism. Listen with your heart, listen with your body. Don't worry too much about figuring it out. And then I'll read it again after that and make a few comments. And by the way, Michael Dietzel, bless his heart, is really efficient and fast at getting the talks on the website, and he puts my notes on there too, or anybody's notes. John's talk from last week is already there. Nice talk, John. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that impermanence. Now it's permanently on the website. So here's faith in mind, Xinxinming. The great way is not difficult, simply set aside picking and choosing. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed, to no avail. The way is perfect like vast space, where nothing is lacking, nothing is in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in the entanglement of outer things nor in the inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things, and such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity by passivity, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. The more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. Stop talking and thinking, and there's nothing you will not be able to know. Do not search for the truth. Only cease to cherish opinions. Do not remain in dualistic states. Avoid these pursuits carefully. If there's even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind essence will be lost in confusion. When mind is in bondage, the truth is hidden. Everything is murky and unclear, and the burdensome practice of judging brings annoyance and weariness. True that, huh? What benefits can be derived from distinction and separation? If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with enlightenment. When all things are seen equally, the timeless self-essence is reached. No comparisons or analogies are possible in this causeless, relationless state. Consider movement stationary, and stationary in motion. Movement and rest will disappear. When such dualities cease to exist, oneness cannot exist. To this ultimate finality, no law, no description applies. For the unified mind, in accord with the way, all self-centered striving ceases. Doubt and irresolution vanishes. Life and true faith is possible. With a single stroke, we are freed from bondage. Nothing clings to us. We hold on to nothing. In this world of suchness, there is neither self nor not self. To come directly into harmony with this reality, just say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded. No matter when or where, enlightenment means entering this truth, and this truth is beyond extension or diminution in time and space. It is a single thought in 10,000 years. Emptiness here, emptiness there. The entire universe stands always before your eyes, infinitely large, infinitely small, no difference. For definitions have vanished, no boundaries can be seen. One thing, all things, move among and intermingle without disturbance, without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. To live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. Words, the way is beyond language, for in it there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today, wrote Master Seng-ts'an all those years ago. You can see why I hesitate to bother you with this stuff. Huh? You love it, huh? All right, good trouble, huh? So again, with a few comments from me, a few underlines. The reason I was saying about the website was this poem will be there. See, you can read it on the text. I almost printed it out, but so much paper, you know. So. All right, so here it is again. The great way is not difficult for those simply set aside picking and choosing. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. So that's the middle line's a little challenging there, wasn't it? Love and hate should be absent. No love, no hate. So again, he's pressing on our tendency. It's this or it's that. So love and hate or absence doesn't mean there's no love and no hate. See? It's not dividing it that way. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is a disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. So what grabs your attention in any given moment? Which way is the mind leaning? Like it, don't like it, yes, no, right? It's pretty constant, right, if you pay attention, right? So our practice is to study this, but he's saying, yes, it's a disease of the mind, but the cure is to leave it be. The cure is not to try to solve it or fix it or see it as a problem. The last part, When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's peace is disturbed to no avail, is don't try to understand. That's disturbing your peace. So the conditioned mind can't be stopped. It's quieter sometimes, It's not right to say it's never quiet. That's too limited. It's not right to say it's always loud, but it often is. But not letting it be a problem, not making it into a problem. Letting your mind flow like water, not sit like a stone blocking your way. And it's to be honored, right? The mind is working hard to figure out your life and to keep you safe and keep you organized and make sure you don't screw up, right? It fails a lot, but it's really trying hard, so we can appreciate our crazy mind, right? I think we can be pretty grateful. That was a little wacky mind, but thanks a lot, You're trying really hard to keep me organized. Sometimes it kind of backfires, but appreciate you, and I'm letting you go, Because the way is perfect like vast space, where nothing is lacking and nothing is in excess. It's our choosing to accept or reject. There we do not see the true nature of things. So this is interesting too. I thought it was all about acceptance. This says don't accept or reject. It's like acceptance level 2, Acceptance that's beyond acceptance. One of my teachers was a local guy, Paul Warwick. He and his wife Jenny, who is still with us, are a couple who are both teachers, and they founded the Shambhala Center, which has since dissolved, I think. Maybe it's a few of them are still sitting. Anyway, he taught me this. He said, Tim, never accept or reject. I'm like, Paul, well, what? And that's all he would say, well, never accept or reject. Didn't you understand? Beyond accepting and rejecting. And speaking of people who have passed, a little sidebar here. Our Sangha member, Michael Calberer, is probably in his last week or two this time around in this life. It's been really interesting to be with him. I haven't seen him as much as I might have liked, but pretty regularly through the last months of his journey. And the first year or so with cancer, and if you don't know Michael, it's okay, but I'll just say a little bit about him. He hasn't been able to come in person much. He got sick. Well, the first 5 or 10 years, he was too shy to come, and then he got sick, and his immune system was compromised. So he wanted to come, but then he couldn't come. So funny how that can go. Anyway, at first he was just really curious. Wow, what's cancer about? How's it work? He would do lots of reading before every appointment, and I hope his doctors enjoyed him. He had lots of questions always, and he would have been happy, I think, to have a 3-hour lecture at every medical appointment, about the ins and outs of cell replication and all this, And he stayed pretty curious for quite a while. But then it started getting confusing, and some of it, I think, is that there are tumors in his spine and into his brain, So then he started to be okay most of the time during the day, still pretty good. And at one point he was saying, I can imagine really enjoying this process. I can imagine being interested in it, but I'm having trouble doing that. I'm like, yeah, well, at least you can imagine that. That's pretty good. And then his dreams started getting really weird, really hard, strange, nightmarish dreams every night. And then he started having trouble telling, what was waking and what was dreaming. And especially the mornings were really hard. And then it was kind of all a dream, and different people have been telling me different things he's said to them. And now he's pretty much asleep, responding a little bit. And you just can't know if his consciousness is in there making those responses or if they're more automatic. It's so interesting and sad and beautiful all at the same time. When I said bye, he said, bye. But we've heard people say goodbye to us how many millions of times in our lives, so our brain, our mind, our mouth automatically says bye. So I don't know if Michael said bye to me. Maybe he did. Maybe his body did. Maybe his heart did. So anyway, he's in the hospital bed at home and he has plenty of support. His friend Don have gone an interesting zigzag relationship life, and she came back to live with him and support him, and they decided to get married. So his wife Don, she's got a professional working all night to take care of him, and then she does the day shift. And she shared with us that if you want to go sit with Michael for a couple hours, that gives her a break. She can take a shower or go on errands or something like that. But pretty much we try to have somebody with him all the time in case he needs us. I think increasingly he won't need much. So anyway, and that's of course the big thing not to accept or reject, isn't it? Life and death. It's exactly life and death, right? Is life really different from death in the way we think it is? We can't really know. Just like we can't know Michael's experiences now. We couldn't know before, but at least he could try to tell us about it, and we could try to imagine that we did know what he was talking about, right? At least we have that, but that's a little bit funny in a way, isn't it? Do we really know anything about anybody's experience, including our own? So these teachings encourage us to just open up, right? We say not knowing is most intimate. That's a line from a koan story. It's so true. So maybe all this is intimacy in the end, but not intimacy as opposed to being estranged from our life. Fully intimacy. A little bit more of the poem here. I spent too long in the sidebars, so I'm going to run out of time. This next one's really, I'll just kind of highlight a few I think are really interesting. I won't try to read all the rest of it. So this one's really interesting. So we think, okay, so I'm supposed to sit down and chill out, right? So then he throws this at us. When you try to stop activity by passivity, your very effort just fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. So it's not about stopping either, to think I can stop or I can sit, I'll just let go. We talk that way, we can't help it, but that's not it either. Let go of letting go, maybe we could say. Stop stopping, What are you doing? I'm stopping. Cut it out. Let go. And this kind of thing also is why Zen is, we don't do it too much around here, but why Zen is famous for abrupt teachings, It's to kind of shake us out of these, deeply conditioned ways of being, and assumptions about conceptual reality, You say, oh yeah, I'm stopping, and someone you respect says, what? Oh, well, am I not stopping? What? So there's a certain amount of healthy confusion in our practice. Okay, here's another one that's really interesting. If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and desires and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with enlightenment. Excuse me. If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses, desires, and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with enlightenment. So this is interesting, especially in reflection with other Buddhist teachings which tell us not to get distracted by the senses, not to get hung up in desire, not to get lost in ideas. So he said, no, let that flow too. Let that flow like water. Don't accept or reject that either. It's just what is, just what is. It's no different from Buddha. Buddha senses and thinks, and Buddha is Buddha. And maybe just the last part again, and then we'll enjoy a little ceremony. In the world of suchness, which is a lovely, weird English construction, suchness, the way that things are just as they are, just such. In this world of suchness, there is neither self nor not self. To come directly into harmony with this reality, just say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded. So this phrase, not to, is a super genius Buddhist phrase, I think, because it's wonderfully weird, you know. So we know it's not all about dividing up, which is two, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, a zillion, you know. But then the antidote is not to be lost in oneness. So it's not, you know, everything that we conceptualize and divide up and have opinions about. If that's not it, and it's not either, then what is it? It's not one, it's not two. Okay, that's what it is. It's not two. Simple, huh? Yeah. So here's the last little part. Emptiness here, emptiness there, but the infinite universe always stands right before your eyes, infinitely large, infinitely small, no difference. Definitions have vanished. No boundaries are seen. One thing, all things move among, intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection and without anxiety about perfection. This faith is the road to non-duality because the non-dual, not two, is one with the trusting mind. And then his last stanza is, words! The way is beyond language, for in it there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today, which is one wonderful way to end a long poem full of words. To say, words! This translator did words with an exclamation mark. They don't have that punctuation in Chinese, but I'm sure that's right. So, that's what I wanted to share with you tonight on this long night. Let me stop the recording here and Desiree can organize us a little bit.